I'm Susan, 26 female. I live in a small, quiet apartment that I cherish more than anything. It's my sanctuary, the one place where the air doesn't feel heavy with expectation. By day, I'm a paralegal, a job that suits my meticulous and quiet nature. I find comfort in the order of legal documents, in the clear lines between right and wrong that are so often blurred in my own life. My life is simple, and that's how I've always needed it to be. For the past 2 years, however, that simplicity has been a facade. I've been living with a secret so corrosive it feels like it's been hollowing me out from the inside. I took the blame for a crime I didn't commit to save my family's golden boy, my younger brother, Mark. They told me it was my duty, a small sacrifice to protect a brilliant future. But the weight of that small sacrifice became an anchor, dragging me down into a silent, suffocating darkness. The guilt was a constant companion, but one day, I realized that guilt and justice are two very different things, and I had to choose which one would define the rest of my life. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Growing up, my family was the picture of suburban success. We lived in a house that was perpetually guest-ready, with a manicured lawn and a two-car garage that housed my father's pristine luxury sedan and my mother's immaculate SUV. Our lives were curated for an audience. My father, David, was a senior partner at a prestigious law firm downtown. He was a man who commanded respect, who spoke with a calm, unshakable authority that left no room for debate. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't have to. A disappointed look from him was enough to make your blood run cold. He was the architect of our family's image, and we were the pillars meant to hold it up without cracking. My mother, Karen, was the curator. Her profession as a high society charity gala organizer was less a job and more a full-time performance. She managed our family's social calendar with the precision of a military strategist, ensuring we were seen at the right events, with the right people, wearing the right clothes. Her conversations were peppered with the names of influential people, and her worth seemed directly tied to the prestige of her connections. She believed appearances weren't just important, they were everything. A stain on our family's reputation was, in her eyes, a fate worse than any private tragedy. Then there was my brother, Mark. 2 years my junior, Mark was the sun around which our family universe orbited. He was charismatic, effortlessly brilliant, and destined for greatness, or so we were constantly reminded. He'd sailed through an Ivy League education and, at 24, had just landed a coveted position as a junior investment banker at a firm that was notoriously difficult to get into. My father saw Mark as his legacy, the continuation of his success. My mother saw him as her crowning social achievement. They poured all their resources, hopes, and ambitions into him. He could do no wrong, and any minor misstep was quickly smoothed over, rationalized, or forgotten. He was the investment, and his future was the only one that yielded any interest. And me, I was Susan, the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who never made waves. I did well in school, got a sensible degree, and found a respectable job as a paralegal. I was praised for being responsible and mature, but I understood what that really meant. I was the stable, low-maintenance child who didn't require the same level of investment. My achievements were met with a pleasant nod, while Mark's were celebrated with lavish dinners and expensive gifts. I learned early on that my role in the family was to be the supporting structure, the invisible scaffolding that made sure the main attraction, Mark, could shine as brightly as possible. I didn't resent it, not really. It was just the way things were. I loved my brother, and I wanted him to succeed. I just didn't realize that my own life was considered disposable in service of that success. My apartment, a 40-minute drive from their sprawling home, was my escape. It was a place where I wasn't Mark's sister or David's daughter. I was just Susan. I could wear an old t-shirt, leave a dish in the sink, and not worry about upholding the family brand. My parents found it odd that I'd chosen to live so modestly. "It doesn't project the right image, honey," my mother would say, wrinkling her nose at my perfectly functional but not luxurious furniture. My father would simply ask if I was being fiscally responsible. his code for questioning whether my life choices measured up to his standards. The family dynamic was most evident at our mandatory Sunday dinners. These were not relaxed family gatherings, they were weekly BOA. RD meetings where my father was the CEO, my mother the PR director, and Mark the star employee up for a promotion. I was the intern taking minutes. The conversation always revolved around Mark's latest triumph at the firm, the important people he was meeting, and the brilliant future that lay ahead of him. My father would grill him on market trends, his eyes gleaming with pride. My mother would plan which charity events he needed to attend to network effectively. I would talk about my job if asked, but my stories of drafting contracts and organizing case files felt mundane, like grayscale photographs in a world of vibrant color. I tried to be happy for him, and a part of me truly was. But another part of me felt like I was slowly fading into the background, my own ambitions and dreams becoming faint pencil sketches in the shadow of his towering oil painting. It was a comfortable cage, gilded with privilege and the illusion of love, but a cage nonetheless. I was safe, I was provided for, but I wasn't truly seen. I had no idea that the bars of that cage were about to be slammed shut, locking me in with a secret that wasn't mine. It happened on a cold, wet Tuesday in November. I was curled up on my sofa with a book and a cup of tea, enjoying the sound of the rain against my window. It was just after 11 p.m., and the peace was absolute. Then my phone rang, its shrill tones slicing through the quiet. The caller ID read, "Mom." A call from her this late was unusual and immediately set my nerves on edge. "Susan, thank God you answered," she said, her voice a frantic, high-pitched whisper. "You need to come home, now, it's an emergency." "What's wrong? Is Dad okay? Is it Mark?" My mind raced through a dozen terrible scenarios. "Everyone is fine, just get here. And don't say anything to anyone, just come." The line went dead before I could ask another question. The 40-minute drive felt like an eternity. Rain lashed against the windshield, and the rhythmic thump of the wipers did nothing to calm my pounding heart. I rehearsed what I might find: a health scare, a financial crisis, something terrible but, in a way, normal. The reality was so much worse. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for a single light in the kitchen. My father's car was parked at a strange angle, and as I got closer, I saw a long, deep scratch and a significant dent on the front passenger side fender. My stomach twisted. I walked in through the garage and found them all at the kitchen table. My mother was pale, her hands trembling as she clutched a mug. My father stood with his back to me, staring out the window, his shoulders rigid. And Mark. Mark was sitting at the table, his head in his hands, his hair a mess. He looked up as I entered, and his eyes were wide with a terror I had never seen before. He looked like a little boy again, lost and terrified. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My father turned around. His face was a grim, unreadable mask. "There's been an incident," he said, his tone low and controlled. "Mark was driving my car. He was coming home from a client dinner." My mother started to sob quietly. "He hit someone, Susan. He didn't see him. A man just walked out into the road." Mark's voice was hoarse. "I panicked," he choked out. "It was dark and the rain, I didn't know what to do. I drove away." A hit and run. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My mind, trained by my paralegal work, immediately started cataloging the legal ramifications. Leaving the scene of an accident, especially one involving injury, was a serious felony. "Did you call the police, an ambulance?" I asked, looking from Mark to my parents. My father finally looked me in the eye. "No," he said, and the cold finality in his voice chilled me to the bone. "And we are not going to." "What, Dad, you have to report this. Someone could be hurt, Mark could go to prison." "Exactly," my father snapped, his composure finally cracking. "He could go to prison. His career, everything we've worked for, his entire future, gone, destroyed before it even begins because of one stupid, panicked mistake." He took a deep breath, regaining his lawyerly calm. "It won't come to that." I didn't understand. "What are you talking about? They'll find the car. There will be witnesses." No, they won't, he said, gesturing to me. Because it wasn't Mark's mistake, it was yours. The room tilted. I stared at him, sure I had misheard. Mine. My mother came over and took my hands. Her touch was icy. Susan, please, you have to understand, she pleaded, her eyes filled with a desperate, manipulative grief. Mark has so much to lose, this would ruin him, but you're stable, you have a quiet life. A misdemeanor, some community service, you can handle it. It would be a slap on the wrist for you, but it would be the end of the world for him. I pulled my hands away, my mind reeling in disbelief. You want me to confess, to say that I was the one driving, that I hit someone and drove away? That's insane. It's the only way, my father stated, as if discussing a business negotiation. I've already thought it through. We'll say you borrowed my car to run an errand. You were emotional, you panicked. You came straight here. I, as your father and an officer of the court, advised you to turn yourself in immediately. It shows remorse. You'll get a lenient judge. I'll hire the best defense attorney. We'll manage this, Susan. He spoke of my life, my clean record, and my future as if they were disposable assets to be leveraged in a damage control strategy. I looked at Mark, hoping he would say something, anything. Tell them no. Tell them it was his responsibility. But he just sat there, staring at his hands, a silent, pathetic monument to his own cowardice. He wouldn't even look at me. Please, Susie, he mumbled, his voice thick. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you, I swear. His apology felt like another betrayal. They weren't asking me, they were telling me. My father laid out the story we would all stick to. My mother wept about protecting her son. My brother offered weak promises of future gratitude. They cornered me in that sterile kitchen, the three of them united in their frantic mission to erase Mark's mistake and rewrite it with my name. They used my love for them, my sense of duty, and my long-ingrained role as the responsible one as weapons against me. I felt my will dissolving under the weight of their combined pressure. My father's logic, my mother's tears, my brother's desperation. It was a perfect, suffocating storm. In that moment, I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was a solution to a problem. I was a sacrifice on the altar of Mark's brilliant future. And as I numbly nodded my agreement, I felt the first piece of my soul begin to decay. The days that followed my forced confession were a blur of surreal horror. My father was true to his word. He managed everything with cold, terrifying efficiency. He hired a top-tier lawyer who specialized in traffic offenses. He coached me for hours on what to say, how to act, drilling the fabricated story into my head until it felt almost real. You were distraught, he'd instruct, his voice devoid of any empathy. You thought you hit an animal. When you realized it might be a person, you panicked and drove to the only place you felt safe, home. You were in shock. I was to be portrayed as a scared young woman who made a terrible error in judgment, not a criminal. I turned myself in the next morning, my father by my side, playing the role of the concerned parent perfectly. I sat in a sterile police station, the smell of disinfectant and stale coffee filling the air, and recited the lines I had been given. The officers were surprisingly gentle. They saw a young woman, clearly distressed, with no prior record, confessing to a crime. It fit the narrative my father had so carefully constructed. The legal process was swift. The victim, a 62-year-old man named Arthur Vance, had survived but with severe injuries, a broken leg, 3 fractured ribs, and a serious concussion. He had no memory of the vehicle. With my confession, the case was open and shut. My lawyer negotiated a plea deal. I pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident involving injury. The judge, citing my clean record and demonstrated remorse, sentenced me to 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, a hefty fine that my father paid instantly, and a temporary suspension of my driver's license. My name was in the local paper, a short article detailing the remorseful paralegal who had made a mistake. I felt sick every time I thought about it. My family treated the verdict as a victory. See, my father said with satisfaction on the way home from the courthouse. Managed, now we can all move on. My mother planned a quiet family dinner to celebrate the end of our ordeal. For them, the problem was solved. Mark's future was secure. The family image was only slightly scuffed and easily polished, and my punishment was merely an inconvenient administrative detail. But I couldn't move on. The lie had become the central fact of my existence. At work, I felt like a fraud. I, a paralegal who handled documents pertaining to justice, was the face of a profound injustice. My colleagues were kind, whispering words of support, telling me that everyone makes mistakes. Their sympathy felt like acid on my skin. I had to take the bus to work, a constant, humbling reminder of my supposed crime. Every time I saw a police car, my heart hammered in my chest. The worst part was the guilt. It wasn't just the guilt of the lie, it was the guilt for Mr. Vance. I imagined him lying in a hospital bed, his life irrevocably altered, while my brother was out at client dinners, climbing the corporate ladder without a care in the world. Mark, for his part, was initially apologetic, in his own shell. Low way, he'd thank me in hushed tones, promising again to make it up to me. But as weeks turned into months, his gratitude faded, replaced by a casual, entitled acceptance of my sacrifice. He'd complain about his long hours at the bank while I was spending my Saturdays picking up trash on the side of the highway for my community service. The imbalance of our realities was staggering. The whispers began subtly. They were the cracks in the facade, the little moments that revealed my family's true nature. One Sunday, I arrived for dinner early and overheard my parents in the kitchen. "Karen, you need to tell Mark to be more discreet," my father said, his voice low and sharp. His friends were asking about the incident at the club. He's treating it like some grand story of a youthful misadventure. "He's just blowing off steam, David," my mother replied dismissively. "He's been under so much pressure. Besides, everyone knows Susan is the one who took care of it. It's over." Took care of it, as if I were the family fixer, not the scapegoat. Another time, Mark was on the phone with a friend, laughing loudly in the other room. "Yeah, it was a close call, man," he boasted. "But my dad's a genius. Handled the whole thing. My sister owed me one anyway." Owed him one? For what? For existing quietly in his shadow my entire life? Each overheard comment, each casual, callous remark was another chip in the foundation of my denial. I had allowed myself to believe, on some level, that they did this out of a twisted, desperate love for him. But these whispers revealed the truth. It wasn't about love. It was about convenience, image, and the preservation of their investment. I wasn't a beloved daughter who had helped her family. I was a tool that had served its purpose and was now expected to sit quietly back in the toolbox. The final crack appeared during a family dinner about a year into my probation. A family friend was talking about her son who had gotten a DUI. My mother shook her head with performative sadness. "It's such a shame when young people make one foolish choice that derails their entire lives," she said, glancing at me with a look of pity that was meant to seem compassionate but felt deeply condescending. "We're just so lucky Susan's situation was managed so well, and that it didn't impact anyone's future." The implication was clear. Anyone meant Mark. My future, my reputation, my emotional well-being, they didn't register on the balance sheet. I sat there, pushing food around my plate, the lie a physical weight in my stomach. The whispers weren't just whispers anymore. They were a screaming chorus in my head, telling me that I had not saved my brother. I had enabled him. I had not protected my family. I had become a willing participant in their deceit. The gilded cage was no longer comfortable. Its bars were cold and sharp, and for the first time, I started desperately searching for a way out. My search for a way out began not with a grand plan, but with a quiet, gnawing need for the truth, not my family's version of it, but the real one. I wanted to know about Arthur Vance. Who was the man whose life my family had so carelessly shattered? My probation terms forbade me from contacting him or his family directly, a rule my father had emphasized with stark gravity. Any contact will be seen as intimidation or an attempt to influence a victim, he had warned. It would undo everything. But I couldn't let it go. So I started small. I used the research skills I'd honed as a paralegal to search for him online. I found his name in the initial news report of the accident, a short, impersonal blurb. I dug deeper and found community articles, social media posts from his family, and a GoFundMe page set up to help with his medical bills. Piece by piece, I assembled a picture of the man. Arthur Vance was a retired librarian, a widower, a beloved grandfather who volunteered at the local animal shelter. He was known for his gentle nature and his passion for gardening. The accident had happened just 2 blocks from his home while he was on his evening walk, a routine he'd followed for years. The GoFundMe page was run by his daughter, Rachel. Her updates were heartbreakingly honest. She wrote about her father's slow, painful recovery, the multiple surgeries, the ongoing physical therapy, and the traumatic brain injury that had left him with memory gaps and a changed personality. He was no longer the vibrant, independent man he had been. He was dependent on her for his daily care. Every update was a testament to her love and resilience, but also a stark chronicle of the devastation my family had caused. The page also mentioned her frustration. The police had closed the case. The person responsible had been given a light sentence and was moving on with her life, while her family's life was permanently derailed. That person was me, or, at least, that's what the world believed. Reading Rachel's words, a powerful unfamiliar feeling began to replace my guilt, anger. A cold, hard anger at my parents and at Mark for their profound selfishness. They had never once asked about Mr. Vance. To them, he was not a person. He was a legal obstacle that had been successfully managed. My community service took me to different parts of the city. One Saturday, I was assigned to a park cleanup crew, and as I was picking up litter near a playground, I saw a woman sitting on a bench, watching a little boy play. I recognized her instantly from the photos on the fundraising page. It was Rachel. Her face was etched with a weariness that I understood all too well. It was the exhaustion of carrying a weight that was never meant to be yours. I watched her for a long time, my heart pounding. This was my chance. It was a stupid, reckless idea, a direct violation of my probation. But the need to connect, to do something other than live with this lie, was overwhelming. Taking a deep breath, I walked over. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Are you Rachel Vance?" She looked up, her eyes wary. "Yes, do I know you?" "No, not really. My name is Susan." I couldn't bring myself to give my last name. I read about what happened to your father. I just wanted to say how sorry I am for what your family is going through." Her expression softened slightly, but the suspicion remained. "Thank you, it's been difficult." "I can't even imagine," I said, and the sincerity in my voice must have been apparent. "The person who did this, I hope you know that not everyone thinks they got off easy." A flicker of interest crossed her face. Most people don't think about it at all anymore. It's old news. "It's not to me," I said, looking her directly in the eye. We talked for a few more minutes. I was careful, never hinting at my identity, just expressing sympathy and listening. She spoke of her father's struggles, the endless appointments, the frustration of seeing a man she adored reduced to a shadow of his former self. There was no bitterness in her voice, only a deep, profound sadness. Before she left, I said something on impulse. "If you ever just need to talk to someone, to vent, I'm a good listener." I didn't expect her to take me up on it, but a week later, I received an email sent through the GoFundMe page's contact form. It was from Rachel. She said my words had stuck with her and that, yes, she would like to talk. We agreed to meet for coffee. The coffee shop was a small, neutral space, buzzing with the low hum of conversation. For a moment, I considered backing out. This was a terrible risk. But the thought of turning back to my silent, guilt-ridden life was even more terrifying. When I saw her, I knew I had to go through with it. We talked for over an hour. She told me everything about her dad's favorite books, his love for his grandson, the way his eyes now seemed vacant sometimes. She confessed her anger at the justice system, at the woman, at me, who had done this and was now free to live her life. "I just don't get it," she said, stirring her latte with a shaky hand. "How can someone do that? Hit a person and just drive away, and then get a slap on the wrist? Her father is some high-powered lawyer, you know. I'm sure that's why. It just feels like the whole system is designed to protect the wealthy and connected. Her words were a dagger in my heart. She was so close to the truth. Listening to her, I realized I couldn't let this lie stand. It wasn't just about my own conscience anymore. It was about Arthur Vance. It was about Rachel. They deserved the truth. My family's precious image wasn't worth more than this family's suffering. My hands were trembling. "Rachel," I began, my voice low and thick with emotion. "There's something I have to tell you. It's going to be very hard to hear. My name, it's Susan Clark. I'm the woman who confessed to the accident." Her face went through a rapid series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, dawning comprehension, and finally, a flash of pure, unadulterated fury. She stood up so abruptly her chair screeched against the floor. "What did you just say?" "Please just sit down for 1 minute," I begged, my own tears starting to fall. "Please, I wasn't the one driving the car." And there, in that anonymous coffee shop, the secret I had carried for over a year finally came pouring out. I told her everything: the late-night phone call, my brother's panic, my parents' cold calculation, the immense pressure they put on me. I told her about my father's legal maneuvering and my mother's obsession with appearances. I told her about the guilt that was eating me alive. When I finished, I was crying, completely exposed and terrified of her reaction. She stared at me, her face pale, her jaw clenched. The anger was still there, but underneath it I saw something else, a flicker of understanding. She had seen the system protect the connected. My story, as unbelievable as it was, made a terrible kind of sense. She was silent for a long time, just watching me, and then she slowly, deliberately sat back down. "Tell me again," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Tell me everything, from the very beginning." Rachel listened to the entire story again without interruption. Her expression was intense, her mind clearly processing every detail, every inconsistency I had been forced to live with. When I finished for the second time, she was no longer looking at me with rage, but with a cold, analytical focus. As a physical therapist, her job was to identify the root cause of pain and create a plan for recovery. I could see her applying that same methodical approach to this situation. "Your father," she said, her voice steady. "He's a partner at David and Finch, right?" I nodded, surprised she knew. "I looked him up after the sentencing," she explained. "I wanted to know who had gotten you such a lenient deal. It all makes sense now. He didn't just represent you, he orchestrated the whole thing. Obstruction of justice, suborning perjury, he's implicated as much as your brother is." Hearing the legal terms spoken so plainly by someone else solidified the gravity of what had been done. My father hadn't just been a parent protecting his son. He had actively committed serious crimes. "What do we do?" I asked, the word "we" slipping out naturally. For the first time, I wasn't alone in this. "The first thing we do is stop thinking like victims," Rachel said, a new strength in her voice. "Your family used their power and your sense of duty against you. They used their wealth and influence to cheat the system and leave my father broken. They believe they're untouchable. We have to prove them wrong." Her resolve was infectious. It extinguished the last embers of fear and ignited a fire of purpose within me. "They've left no evidence," I said, thinking aloud. "It's my word against theirs. My father is a brilliant lawyer. He would have made sure of that." "People like them always make mistakes," Rachel countered. "They're arrogant. They believe they're smarter than everyone else. They get sloppy. We just have to find where." And so began our secret alliance. We met in quiet coffee shops, in secluded corners of parks, and communicated through encrypted messaging apps. My paralegal skills, once a source of shame, now became our greatest asset. I knew how to organize information, how to think in terms of evidence and documentation. Rachel, driven by a daughter's fierce love, was the strategist, always pushing us to think one step ahead. We started by building a timeline of the night of the accident. I forced myself to remember every detail: the time of my mother's call, the exact words my father used, the state of the car when I arrived. "You said there was a scratch and a dent on the passenger side," Rachel prompted during one of our sessions. "Mark hit my dad. That means my dad would have been on the right side of the car. Was your brother alone? I thought back. Yes, he was. He was coming home from a client dinner downtown. A client dinner, Rachel mused. Investment bankers, they put everything on the company card. There has to be a receipt, a credit card statement. It was a long shot. The dinner had been over a year ago, but it was a start. While I tried to figure out a way to access Mark's records, Rachel focused on another angle. Your mother, she said one afternoon, you said her entire life is about appearances. She must talk, she must gossip. Who is her closest friend? Her confidant. I immediately thought of Brenda, another woman from her charity circuit. My mother and Brenda were inseparable, constantly on the phone, sharing every detail of their lives. If my mother had unburdened herself to anyone, it would have been her. This part of the plan fell to me. I had to reconnect with my family, to pretend that everything was normal. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. I started attending Sunday dinners again, biting my tongue as I listened to Mark brag about a recent bonus or my mother lament the incompetence of a caterer. I played the part of the dutiful, quiet daughter, all while my stomach churned with revulsion. During one dinner, I casually mentioned that I had run into Brenda's daughter and that we'd had a nice chat. My mother lit up. Oh, Brenda was just telling me she was worried about you, Susan. It's so good to see you getting back to your old self. I used that opening. I started calling my mother more often, feeding her harmless bits of gossip, slowly rebuilding a semblance of trust. My goal was simple, to get her comfortable enough to let something slip. Meanwhile, a stroke of luck. My parents announced they were going on a 2-week cruise to celebrate their 35th anniversary. This was the opportunity we needed. The day after they left, I told Mark I needed to pick up some old photo albums from my childhood room for a project. He was busy with work and barely steered my request, just telling me where the spare key was. Once inside the house, I went straight to my father's home office. It was a fortress of mahogany and leather, a room that had always intimidated me. I started with his filing cabinets, my hands shaking. It felt like a terrible violation, but I pushed the feeling down. I was looking for anything related to the car, the accident. After an hour of fruitless searching, I turned to his computer. It was password protected, of course, but my father, a man of habit and ego, was predictable. I tried his birthday. No, his anniversary. No, I tried Mark Legacy 1. The computer unlocked. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I searched his emails, his documents, looking for anything, and then I found it. In a deeply buried folder labeled Household Expenses, there was a subfolder titled Automotive. Inside was a scanned PDF of an invoice from a private, under-the-table body shop, dated 3 days after the accident. The invoice was for a comprehensive front-end repair on my father's car model. It was paid in cash. He hadn't used his normal, reputable dealer. He had gone somewhere that wouldn't ask questions, but like the meticulous lawyer he was, he couldn't bring himself to not keep a record. It was the sloppiness Rachel had predicted. I took a photo of the screen with my phone, and then, my hands trembling with adrenaline, I found what I was looking for next: the digital statements for the family credit card Mark used. I scrolled back to the month of the accident. There it was. A charge from the Oak Room, a high-end steakhouse downtown. But below it was another charge from the same night, just an hour later, at a bar called The Dive on the complete opposite side of town, miles away from the route home. The client dinner was his alibi. But the second charge suggested he had gone out drinking afterwards. I had it. A receipt that proved my father had secretly repaired the car, and a credit card statement that placed my brother drinking far from where he claimed to be. It wasn't a confession, but it was enough. It was the truth, and we were about to turn it into a weapon. My parents returned from their cruise tanned and relaxed, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to break. My mother immediately began planning their anniversary dinner, a grand affair to be held at their home. It was meant to be an intimate gathering of their closest friends and family, the very people whose opinions they valued above all else. It was, as Rachel and I agreed, the perfect stage. Our plan was precise and multi-layered. Rachel had a friend who was a freelance journalist. We gave her the story, backed up by the evidence I had found, under the condition that she hold it until she received a text from Rachel. Rachel also prepared a formal statement on behalf of her father to be released simultaneously. The final piece was a consultation I had with a lawyer, not one from my father's world, but a young, hungry attorney who specialized in criminal justice reform. He advised me on my own legal exposure and the best way to present the information to the authorities after the fact. He confirmed that my testimony, combined with the new evidence, would be enough to open a formal investigation. The night of the dinner party, the house was filled with the low hum of polite conversation and the clinking of wine glasses. My mother was in her element, floating through the room, while my father held court by the fireplace, accepting congratulations. Mark was there, looking polished and confident in a tailored suit, charming the guests. I watched them, a strange calm settling over me. They were actors in a play, and I was about to bring the curtain down. Rachel was waiting in her car just down the street. We had timed everything. I was to wait until dessert, when everyone was relaxed and captive at the dining table. As the plates were being cleared, my father stood up, glass in hand, to propose a toast. "To 35 years with my beautiful wife, Karen," he began, smiling warmly, "and to a family that has always understood the importance of loyalty and strength." The room erupted in polite applause. This was my cue. I stood up, my own water glass in my hand. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady when I spoke. "I'd like to propose a toast as well." All eyes turned to me. My parents looked surprised but pleased, assuming I was about to offer a touching tribute. "I'd like to toast to the truth," I said, my eyes locking with my father's. "Because, as this family knows, the truth can be a difficult thing. Sometimes it gets buried under loyalty and strength." A confused silence fell over the table. My father's smile faltered. "Susan, what are you doing?" he asked, his voice low. 2 years ago," I continued, my voice growing stronger, "a man named Arthur Vance was the victim of a hit-and-run. He was left on the side of the road with life-altering injuries. I confessed to that crime." I looked around the table at the shocked faces of our friends, but I wasn't the one driving that night. My mother gasped. "Susan, stop this right now. You are embarrassing yourself." "The person driving the car," I said, turning my gaze to my brother, "was Mark." Mark went white as a sheet. "She's lying," he stammered. She's unstable." "Am I?" asked calmly. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small stack of papers. "This is a receipt from an auto body shop for a cash repair to Dad's car, dated 3 days after the accident. A shop you'd only go to if you didn't want a record." I placed it on the table. "And this," I said, adding another paper, "is a credit card statement showing that on the night of the accident, after your client dinner, you were at a bar called The Dive, Mark. A bar that is nowhere near the route you claimed you took home." My father stood up, his face purple with rage. "This is a private family matter. You will stop this spectacle at once." "It stopped being a private matter when you coached me to lie to the police," I shot back, my voice ringing with a newfound power. "It stopped being a private matter when you committed obstruction of justice, Dad. You, a senior partner at a law firm, suborned perjury to protect his career." The guests were frozen, their faces a mixture of horror and fascination. This was the kind of drama they usually only read about. "And you," I said, my voice softening as I looked at my mother, "you called it a small sacrifice. You told me my quiet life could handle it. Did you ever once think about Arthur Vance's life, or his daughter S?" Right on cue, there was a quiet knock at the front door. Everyone turned. I walked over and opened it. Standing on the doorstep was Rachel. She was poised, her expression calm and resolute. "This is Rachel Vance," I announced to the silent room. "Her father is the man my brother almost killed and whose life my parents decided wasn't as important as our family's image." Rachel walked into the room and stood beside me. She didn't say a word, she didn't have to. Her presence was a powerful testament to the real-world consequences of their actions. My father stared at me, his lawyerly composure completely shattered. He looked at the evidence on the table, at Rachel, and at the horrified faces of his friends. He saw his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. In that moment, he wasn't a powerful attorney, he was just a man who had been caught. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Rachel's journalist friend. The article was live. I held up my phone. "It's over," I said quietly. "Everyone knows." The anniversary dinner of reckoning was complete. The gilded cage had been smashed open, and all the ugly secrets were finally spilling out into the light. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic, at least for my family. The moment our guests realized the full scope of the scandal, they started making hurried, awkward excuses and fled the house as if it were on fire. They wanted no association with the ugly truth that had just been exposed. My father's carefully curated network of influence evaporated in a matter of minutes. After Rachel and I left, the house fell into a stunned, toxic silence. I didn't need to be there to imagine the scene. My father, the master manipulator, finally outmaneuvered. My mother, the guardian of appearances, watching her social standing disintegrate. And Mark, the golden child, finally forced to confront the consequences he had so arrogantly dodged. The next morning, the journalist's story was everywhere. It was the lead story on the local news website, complete with my evidence and Rachel's powerful statement. The headline was brutal: "Prominent lawyer's family implicated in hit-and-run cover-up." The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. My father's law firm, facing a PR nightmare, immediately placed him on an indefinite leave of absence, a corporate euphemism for being fired. My mother's name was quietly dropped from the committees of the charity galas she had once ruled. Her phone, which used to ring off the hook, fell silent. For Mark, the consequences were even more direct. With the new evidence, the district attorney's office reopened the case. My previous conviction was vacated, and charges were filed against him for leaving the scene of an accident and against my father for obstruction of justice and witness tampering. The legal battle was short. Faced with the invoice, the credit card statement, and my unwavering testimony, they had no defense. Mark, the brilliant investment banker with the limitless future, was sentenced to 18 months in state prison. My father, thanks to a plea deal, avoided jail time but surrendered his license to practice law, ending his prestigious career in disgrace. They disown me, of course. My mother sent me a single, venomous text message calling me a traitor who had destroyed family for my own selfish need for attention. My father never spoke to me again. I heard from a cousin that they sold the house and moved to a different state, unable to face the shame and the social exile. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I had lost the only family I'd ever known, but I had also been liberated from them. The love they had offered was conditional, and the price of that love, my integrity, my conscience, was one I was no longer willing to pay. My life, on the other hand, began to piece itself back together in a new and healthier way. The process of coming forward was terrifying, but it was also cleansing. The weight of the guilt I had carried for 2 years lifted, replaced by a sense of peace I hadn't felt since that terrible phone call. My boss at the law firm called me into his office. I was sure I was going to be fired, but instead, he told me he admired my courage. He said that the integrity I had shown was exactly what the legal profession needed more of. Rachel and I remained in each other's lives. We weren't best friends, bonded by happy memories, but we were something deeper. We were allies, forged in a shared fight for justice. I would sometimes join her when she visited her father in his care facility. Arthur Vance's recovery was slow, and he would never be the man he once was, but there were good days. On those days, he would smile when he saw us, a flicker of his old self in his eyes. The settlement from the civil suit Rachel filed against my family ensured he would have the best care for the rest of his life. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a just one. One afternoon, about a year after the confrontation, Rachel and I were having coffee at the same shop where I had first confessed everything to her. The sunlight streamed through the window, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely warm. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked me quietly. "Losing your family?" I thought about it for a moment. I thought about the hollow feeling of their conditional approval, the crushing weight of their expectations, and the suffocating silence of their secrets. Then I thought about the freedom of living in the truth, the quiet strength I'd found in myself, and the profound, unlikely friendship sitting across from me. "No," I said, and I was surprised by how certain I was. I didn't lose my family that night. I just finally accepted that I never really had one. I had walked away from a gilded cage and into the messiness of a real, authentic life. It wasn't perfect or polished, but it was mine. And for the first time, I felt truly, completely free.